Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yep.
can, but hold on here.
So I guess Senator
We're
Todd
on the
Young,
air.
Republican from Indiana, is voting against Pete Hegseth.
Kurt, we're live.
It's showtime on the show.
It is indeed. And hello, everybody. Welcome to California Free Radio. I forgot what show I was on for a second. I'm Mike Netter, and obviously going senile for just a bit here. As always, I'm accompanied every week by Scott Piotr and Kurt English, which is indeed his real last name, not a cover. And I want to start off tonight's show with a little bit of an ask of everybody. We stream this show live on X, formerly known as Twitter, on my feed at Netter Mike. It's streamed on LinkedIn. And it's streamed on my feed on Facebook on the Rebuild California groups. Help us share the show across social media. I'm delighted to say we get thousands of viewers every week. And like Larry Olds and a few others tonight, participate. When you go to my social media or Scott's, you're going to find the link where you can come in. We can put you up on the air and we can make you live. And we want to hear what you have to say because, as every week, there's a lot to talk about. Also, if you've got a few bucks, let's face it, most people they got enough for Christmas anyway. And at today's prices, you can't afford to get them what they really want. Contribute to Rebuild California as our political PAC helps sponsor the show. And if you're wondering where to find us, it's rebuildcalifornia.com, the original political PAC that started the recall of Gavin Newsom. Kurt, Scott,
We're
I'm
here.
here.
well,
I'm here.
that went well. Let's try it again. Kurt, Scott, how the
You
hell
said,
are you guys tonight?
you said
We got
Kurt.
well, that's true. I did. Kurt, I noticed you're wearing a shirt that said, "Now's our time." Are you talking about the communist Trump?
Is
I'm
this
Communist
talking about the
Trump?
Los Angeles Kings, who've won 6 games in a row and are the best NHL team in the state of California.
Yeah, but you're
Well,
wearing a
that's
shirt
good
from
to know.
2014. What's with that?
Stanley Cup's the only California team to win more than one Stanley Cup ever.
That's still 10 years ago.
Well, thanks for
Look
the
at the
sports
look at the
report.
standings. I'd encourage all of our viewers and listeners to look at the NHL standings.
Well, let's
Yeah, yeah,
talk
yeah.
about some of the standings that's going on in California when it comes to elections. There's been a lot of talk this week about, well, and you can see it on my X feed, and we'll get to a second, but Orange County exceptionally with the number of printed ballots, whatever. I know the Orange County Republican Party came out with a statement today that said, never mind. But, gentlemen, we've got to take a look at California elections. And let's start off by doing a little roundtable on that because there's something wrong that California takes longer to count ballots, well, frankly, than the Kings won their last Stanley Cup. The process takes too long. People don't trust the system. And whether it's overtime in a hockey game, extra innings in baseball, or doing anything in general, the longer something goes on, the harder it is to track and the more chance things will go wrong. Scott, why don't you start by weighing in on that? And I'm going to do a little bit of sharing on social media.
So California takes 30 stinking days to count. I mean, here's Florida. The next day, they're done. They've got everything counted. They have results, their official final results. California takes 30 days. They waited till December 1st to certify the election. So why does it take them that long? Well, here's their excuse. And it's because the Democrats have developed a system that makes it easy to cheat, easy to vote, easy to cheat. And so what happens is you can vote on election day with your mail-in ballot as long as it's postmarked on election day, and then the post office has 7 days to deliver it. And so up to 7 days, they're still getting votes in. Who knows when they were actually cast? As long as they have that postmark.
Scott,
Day.
you're being charitable. What's really going on is they're figuring out how many votes they need for these congressional seats, just like they did in 4 of the Senate seats, and they're creating fake ballots to cheat.
That's right. And then how hard is it to forge a postmark? How hard is it to forge a postmark?
They
They probably just take their business, Brittany, machine and run the thing through and just backdate it. Does it have to be a USPS postmark? No rule on that. So they just take a postmark. Some of them come without postmarks. They count them anyway. So exactly right. They sit there and go, "Oh, we need 3,500 votes," and they manufacture 3,500 votes overnight, put them in the next day's mail, postmark it the previous day. They're good to go. Oh, wait a second. Did I say that out loud? Yeah, they're cheating. And how hard is it to cheat? They have to find a legitimate voter that hadn't already voted.
Well, and
Oh,
here's the other thing. Look at all those 4 Senate seats, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan that were stolen. And the House seats that were stolen, they're all in Democrat jurisdictions where they're putting in fake ballots when they see how many they need. And
right.
the House determines who is elected. They should not seat those people. They should recount, just like they did in the Bob Dornan race in 1996.
So they sit there and they get these ballots in, they count them, they verify the signature before they count them, but the signature verification is a joke. They hardly ever reject a signature. And even when they reject it, you're allowed to, as an observer, to challenge that rejection. And so the Democrats are out there challenging every single rejection because they're mostly Democrats that can't write. And then provisional ballots. So you walk into a voting center and they say, you've already voted. And you're like, no, I didn't vote. Yeah, you returned your absentee ballot. No, I didn't. So you cast what's called a provisional ballot. And so that allows you to, if they determine that you hadn't not already voted, then they'll count the provisional ballot. But guess what? Hey, you voted, they verified the signature, you're screwed. You can't vote. They're not going to count your ballot. So if someone did vote for you, you didn't get yours in first, so they count the counterfeit instead of the real one. And that takes 30 days to go through all of these ballots. They had almost 400,000 ballots that they ended up having to count after election day. And they get about 6 to 20,000 votes or ballots a day that they count, depending on which ones they're going through. And it just takes them that long to count them. So naturally, surprise, surprise, we were leading in 2 of these congressional seats, actually 3, if you count a challenger, and we ended up losing all 3. So we had 3 incumbent Republicans that lost after Election Day and are not being seated. One of them was Orange County, Michelle Steele. Then you had Garcia up in Thousand Oaks area, and then you had James. What was the guy's name? Mike.
But also Scott Baugh in Orange County.
And he was one of the challengers. And he actually was winning or close to it on election day and just went further and further behind as they counted out.
This is total fraud.
It's fraud. It's ridiculous. It needs to change. It kind of reminds me of the Trump assassination report that just came out. They had their bipartisan House committee investigating, and they have no answers. Oh, surprise, surprise. Because the DOJ and the FBI are not responding to the congressional oversight. They refuse to respond. And ironically, it's one of the things that they ask is one of the things that they're looking for, like the first guy who died, hey, what was his motivation? Was he working with anybody else? And of course, the longer these things go on, the more the conspiracy theories grow, right? As what happened with the JFK assassination. But they want to know what caused him to do this. I mean, duh. Biden and the Democrats were sitting there day after day pounding on Trump as being the guy that was going to end democracy as we know it. And so, I can sit there and tell him what the guy's motivation was. The Democrats scared the crap out of him, and the guy was unhinged, and he decided to do something about it. So
let me jump in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, when are we going to do something like that about election integrity? We need to jump in there, get some answers, and resolve this thing. And I figure Trump's got the first 2 years of his administration. That's when we have to get it done.
I think it's important to note, and I've said this a lot of times on the radio during the recall, etc., that a ballot is something that the state of California doesn't treat importantly. It's like finding $100 bill out there. One of the things that I was looking for it on my X feed, it looks like Well, they printed, there's 1.8 million 61 voters in Orange County. A staggering 1.4 million ballots plus a return. That's a 75% turnout. It makes no sense. It looks like there's over 325,000 more ballots were sent out than the registered voters. And I'm going to slam our own OC Republican Party here. They came out with, wow, 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 there's reasons for it. But the reality is, there really aren't reasons for it. I also want to add something else that you two gentlemen, you two guys, sorry, verbal slip up, talked about a couple minutes ago, or didn't talk about. There's a list that's been compiled, and we've been talking about these lists for years. And I want to challenge the Republican Party in California to take a look at this. We've called some of the candidates and told them early on. There are approximately a list we found, and I've got the list of 11,000 voters at least, over 4,000 in Orange County, that should not be registered to vote. This happens every election, and I'm being very kind here. The list is way bigger than that. Now, for everyone out there, a couple of years ago, we talked about dead people. Not myself, but dead people in general being, I'm using this so you understand, being registered. Indeed, people do die and they're not unregistered. The question comes on this big
Oh, but
list
wait
of
a minute.
people.
My dad, when he died, they unregistered him right away. He's a
I get it, but
Republican, registered
many people
Republican.
aren't. But here's the question that we can see.
You have to identify it's really dead Democrats you're talking about.
Well, right, dead Democrats, whoever they are, there are people that should not be registered on the rolls. What we have the ability to check, and as much as we don't like machines, they give us a quick ability to check and see if people have cast those votes. If somebody who has moved to Alaska, Wisconsin, moving out of California rapidly, whose state of residence isn't here, is somebody who doesn't happen to be a U.S. citizen and got accidentally registered by the DMV, and did they cast a ballot? And Kurt, to your point, those are the elections that are the votes that we need to challenge. And so, although there's a lot of dead wood on the rolls that they should clean up, we have the ability to see if that dead wood has voted. And we should be challenging that immediately within 2 to 3 days after the election. Gentlemen, give me your feedback on that.
I think it's ridiculous that our Republican Party isn't fighting harder. Same thing with the RNC. They fought. They had lawyers, for Trump, but they didn't do a good enough job for with the Senate and all these House seats. We should have much bigger majorities. And California has really. And I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of hardworking volunteers in the California Republican Party and in the county in different counties. They have been very ineffective. All you got to do is look at the scoreboard, guys. Just like in sports, we're all sports fans. If you fail and you don't even have a third in the 2 seats of the legislature, I blame the state Republican Party. All of them should resign. You fire the manager. If he loses, you fire the coach. Time to fire the people in charge.
Well, let's talk about that. That's a great lead into one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight, Kurt, and we didn't even practice. In spring, for those of you that are delegates, and if you're not a delegate, we are going for a new chair. And those of us in the grassroots, commonly known as the people of California, are putting our weight behind Mike Morell, who thinks like we do. Look, Jessica Patterson has served 3 terms. I'm not going to make this into a incumbent bashing session being a delegate. Kurt, you can. And I'm kind of with you, but we need to get a chair.
Scoreboard. It's about
Score
results.
100%. But there's a bright spot coming at the spring convention if we can get Mike Morell elected. And if you're not out there and not a California delegate, you can become an associate delegate and you can participate in the spring convention. And Kurt, the problem is that most people don't understand how the party mechanism operates. So that's bright spot number one. I want to go to bright spot number two, and that's one of the big three in the Republican Party, Harmeet Dillon, who I believe to be restaurant quality, has now gotten appointed by Donald Trump to be the Associate Attorney General of the United States for civil rights. And that includes election. And she's one of the big three, one of our national chair people. And again, I'll leave other names out of it, but I want to give congratulations to Harmeet. I know her well, and she's been doing her best to stand up for election rights in California, or election integrity, as we call it. And now she's in a position of power to do something about it. Scott, roll to you so we can give a couple comments here before Kirk
Yeah,
gives us another sports report.
she Harvey Diller is, like you say, restaurant quality. She's the current California Republican Party National Committee woman, and she is an excellent attorney. And she's been out there fighting for constitutional rights on various constitutional issues. One of which has been election integrity. So I'm glad to hear that it's not only going to be civil rights, but election laws. Oh man, that I can't wait for daylight to get into that. I would love to see national legislation that says, "Hey guys, you can do whatever you want to do each state on your elections, but you have to meet these certain standards. How you meet them, up to you, but you got to meet them, and have something that basically makes it so that it's hard to cheat and
Well,
that they can
Scott,
prove it."
Trump's new press secretary, who was the campaign press secretary, Levitt, said Trump is going to order paper ballots, same day voting on day one and make the libs sue. Because remember, with federal elections, the feds can set the rules for federal elections. The states cannot control how federal elections are done, only how elections without federal candidates are run. They can do whatever they want there, sadly.
But the Constitution does allow the states to set kind of the time and manner type of a thing, and how the logistics work. The government, the feds are not doing that. That's the state. But like you said, the feds can set certain standards for federal elections, and then what are they going to do? Hold two elections, one with a state standard and one with a federal standard? I don't think so. They'll use the federal standard, and the solution is just like you said. We need to have absentee ballots should be infrequent and with a legitimate excuse, and there should be a signed witness that basically acknowledges that he witnessed.
And they should be received on or before election day, period.
And all ballots have to be received on or before election day. End of discussion. You're not allowed to do anything else. But very, very rare absentees for those, in the military or, the elderly that cannot get out of their house. Go ahead and make them absentees, but make them have a witness signature so that if you ever did go back and question it, you could actually go and question the witness too. And they're signing under penalty of perjury. So there's some accountability there for the exception of the absentee. Otherwise, absolutely same day voting, paper ballots, and you have to show a voter ID.
Let me cover a couple things here that are very important. Michael, and I can't remember his last name, it's on my X feed, a guy I know, a fantastic city attorney in Huntington Beach. And when you're looking for victories, and I know we're screaming political advocates on California free radio, but one of the successes that just happened, and I want to go a little bit deep on this election subject because you both are bringing up some good points. First off, the federal government, to Kurt's point, can only control federal elections. Now, local governments like Huntington Beach passed a mandate by the people that said, oh, yes. Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up. Ain't that special? Okay. That is a great crew in Huntington Beach, was also on my X feed, all getting sworn in MAGA hats. How cool is that?
Now, actually,
And
to be honest, these are Make Huntington Beach Great Again hats.
we'll
And
call them.
This is
How
the
does that? What's that sound like? Munga hats?
Yeah, I like MAGA better. Easier to pronounce. But yeah, I mean it's pretty good. They basically have a 7-0 Republican majority on their council for the first time in a long time. and the Mike Gallagher, the city attorney, he's the one that's out there doing like what you said, and they have, just like the feds are allowed to set the rules for elections for federal races. Huntington Beach is a charter city, and so they decided that they wanted to set the voting regulations for municipal elections. So even though the state doesn't require voter ID in Huntington Beach to vote in the Huntington Beach City Council race, you have to show voter ID. And that has pissed off our state AG.
And what did the state AG do, Scott?
Oh, file a lawsuit immediately because he's an
And
idiot.
how did that work out for him?
He lost. He
He
lost.
lost. And so now Michael Gallagher, and thank you for remembering the last name, I couldn't, is actually out on, reposted this on X. Okay. He's saying other cities, you can do the same thing with your local elections. So let's give Gavin and his lapdog Rob Bonta a bit of the squeeze. Trump can require things for federal elections with Harmeet. I think that's going to happen. Hold that fire. And locally, you can require them in local elections. That's going to put the state in a squeeze in the middle for state offices to start to follow along. And it's also going to be rather awkward for Gavin Newsom. Not that it isn't awkward anyway. Hell, he is Gavin Newsom. But it's going to be awkward for him to try to separate state rules for elections because most elections do have a federal office on them. And if they're just local with state and it's required in a local municipality, it's even more awkward for Gavin. But gentlemen, and you too, I want to clarify something here that the Democrats slipped in on this and why this is an important subject. Until Donald Trump came along, let's face it, it had gone out of vogue a little bit to pay a lot of attention to elections, call election integrity, call it this, call it that. Okay. Even though this has been going on for 100 years, Chicago, New York, the unions, etc. But let me clarify something that really got lost in the shuffle. I think during COVID, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, who the hell knows, the state of California authorized mailing a ballot to everybody. You guys remember that?
Yeah, and then automatic registration when you sign up at the DMV.
That was separate. That automatic registration is a national law. And I don't mean to keep correcting you, but I want to clarify these out to get to my punchline. It's the National Motor Voter Law. That's not a California law. That required, now the DMV handles it sloppily, but something else. But here's a punchline for you. Did you ever wonder, out of 22 million voters, why, when they said, all right, we're going to mail a ballot to everybody because it's COVID, we want you to stay home, blah, blah, blah. The newspapers said, and still call them the newspapers, that they're only mailing out an additional 3.5 million ballots out of 22 million. Did you ever wonder about that? Why not 22 million ballots? It was only 3.5 million additional ballots. You want to know why? Because our state legislature, way back when we weren't paying attention, I believe it was 2010, made a separate law. And Scott, you nailed this on the head and reminded my senile mind about it. They said that once you register as an absentee voter, at first it was for 2 elections at any time, which we all have at one time, okay? We can't make it, we can't leave the house, right? Anywhere in your lifetime, we're going to make you a permanent absentee voter. So 70% of the ballots were being mailed out anyway. And they slipped that little old law in on us where they were mailing us ballots and we didn't even know they were mailing ballots. Going back to a point I was trying to make earlier, we need to treat our ballots in California like we used to, like they're $100 bills. And if I'm going to give you the $100 bill or the check, you need to show some ID. And I know that this bill or this particular thing is only for you. And the problem is we just don't don't take our ballots seriously in California. Whatever these stats are in Orange County, right, wrong, or indifferent, however we register people, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's a system which doesn't take it seriously. Go ahead, gentlemen.
You want to jump in, Kurt? Oh, by the way, correction, it's actually Michael Gates is the city attorney in Huntington
The
Beach.
solution,
Michael Gates, that's the name.
the
Yes,
solution is paper ballots, precinct.
no relation to Bill.
If there's any precinct where there's more ballots turned in than registered voters, automatic investigation.
Whoa.
In fact, you might consider invalidating the whole precinct's votes and having everybody vote with video cameras, watching everybody go in, ID and proof of who you are. And then you can't have more votes than you have registered voters in a precinct.
You mean 2 + 2 does not equal 5?
Only in liberal classrooms.
Or voting booths. Yeah.
One thing we need to do before elections, and this is important for everybody to understand too, and a lot of what you're talking about takes place because although we technically require the ROVs, register of voters in each county, to clean up the voter rolls, it's kind of like Kurt and Scott tell me to quit talking, but there's no penalty for it. So there isn't a penalty and nobody follows through. And so just as our buddy Larry worked on that lawsuit where LA was found to have 1.8 million illegal voters on the rolls, it took 3 years for LA to clean it up, and now they built back up again because they're technically violating the law, but there's no penalty for it. And there's no cure or reason for them not to do it. So we've really got to start by cleaning up our voter rolls. We've built so much garbage in the voter rolls. Did you guys know that we grew magically with a declining population from, and I get number of eligible voters and all that good stuff, but many people don't vote. We've grown from 17 million voters to 22, 23 million voters in just the last 4 years that are registered. And where the hell do they come from? And forget the number of people in
Illegal
the state.
aliens.
Come from a lot of places like that, probably do, Kurt. And what's interesting is voter turnout has gone down. So technically, if you don't vote by law for 2 federal elections in a row, your registration is supposed to be yanked and you're supposed to re-register. Did you know that with the last 2 gubernatorial elections, for example, we've had a turnout of about 14 million. This presidential election will have a turnout of about 18 million, meaning there's probably about 4 million people that should have their beep, 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 kicked off the voter rolls and be forced to re-register with ID.
Oh.
Scott, I can see I'm boring you.
Well, you look at Los Angeles County. They're a picture of what not what not to do. Yes, look around. You live there. It's your fault. So they have eligible voters. Eligible voter is just the person who is a citizen and is of the right age. Right now, he's an eligible voter. He's not necessarily registered, but he's eligible. So their voter rolls are so bad that they have. By the way, you have all these eligible voters. You're lucky if you get 80% of the eligible voters to actually be registered. But in LA County, they have 120% of the eligible voters are registered to vote. So they have a lot of dead wood on there. And that county is what? The most populous county in the entire country. So there is a big number.
And Orange County is having kind of the same problem here too. So again, we've talked a lot about voter, and let's cut it down to this, gentlemen. There's something wrong with the system. But I want to stress for anybody running for office or knowing that someone that does, I want to make this perfectly clear, as Tricky Dick used to say.
Perfectly clear.
Under our system, it only works if at some point we're not the banana republic, okay? Although in California you could put that down, but let's just roll with the fact we're not the banana republic. You only have until an election is certified to challenge it. Now, in today's world, again, I want to stress, We've had data. I've moved data over to candidates. We've called candidates to look at people that are ineligible and say, hey, did that person vote? Once an election is certified, and they were certified in counties on the 9th and are being certified at the SOS, Secretary of State in Sacramento, on the 13th. It's done. Every election, to your point, Kurt, we need the California Republican Party and we, the people, to stand up and start to pay a lot more attention. But you know, Kurt, I think we should go now to a little bit of some of the fun stories that you sent us tonight. I'm going to bring up your show notes because there's some pretty good beep beep happening out there. I try to do. Go ahead.
I want to start with one. It didn't make it to his list since we're talking about voter integrity. There is a guy who is a local businessman out in Ventura County. His name is Bruce Boyer.
Oh, this is a great one. Yes.
And he sits there, local businessman, U.S. Army veteran. He's been a congressional candidate out there in a very, very blue county. And so he decided to prove the point on how bad their voter rolls were. So he registered his cat, a very cartoonish name. They don't say what the name is. And he completed his mail-in ballot eligibility, mailed it in, and he made the rolls, and they mailed him a ballot, that being the cat. And he then subsequently registered his other 3 cats to vote. Now, this guy's got, issues if he's got 4 cats, but that's beside the point. So he has all 4 of these cats registered. Now, mind you, he never voted for them. He never cast a fraudulent vote. He did it just to prove how easy it was to register and how easy it was for an illegal to register or for other people that are ineligible to register and therefore be able to vote because they all got mailed ballots. And so what happens with the George Soros type DA that's out there? He's not going after illegal aliens. He went after Boyer for fraudulently registering his cats to vote. And it's kind of like, what an idiot. Does he realize that he's just making a fool of himself and a fool of the situation and he's playing into Boyer's hands? It's ridiculous.
It's more than ridiculous. But not only did they go after Boyer for basically showing something wrong with the system, kind of think of him as a white hat voter hacker. When they arraigned him before the court, the district attorney of Ventura, where this happened, wanted to give him $100,000 bail. Now, understand, in Ventura, you can smash and grab and walk off, frankly, with the king's jewels and probably not get $100,000 bail. That's what the district attorney was asking for registering 4 cats which didn't vote, which, by the way, is a good name for an old rock song, or at least a band. But fortunately, the judge saw the light and said it's ridiculous and is released on his own recognizance. And as far as last I heard, Scott, he's in custody of those 4 cats not being allowed to leave the house.
Oh, they put ankle bracelets on the cats? Is that what you're saying?
I think so. But so he's in feline prison. But that's a great story. One, again, Scott put out in his feed, I put out on his feed. But Kurt, there's some interesting stuff going on in California. We talked about the Orange County one. We've talked about, and for everyone out there, Kurt puts out great show notes. We might just start publishing these, kind of a synopsis. We talked about Huntington Beach, all of them wearing MAGA hats there. Why don't we talk about store closures in San Francisco?
Well, on our KABC show and on our video cast here throughout the year, we've talked about a lot of closures in blue jurisdictions like Oakland and San Francisco. And now Safeway is going to close another store in San Francisco. Why, you might ask? Because of theft and safety.
Thank you.
Theft and safety concerns. I guess people are tired of being run over by smash and grab artists in the store. And go to the stores in California. Our listeners and viewers see this. They're locking up $2, $3, $4, $5 items now that you have to get somebody to come open with a key.
I mean, it's already bad enough. It's already bad enough for brick and mortar, right? It's a hassle to go to brick and mortar. It's a lot easier to click a couple of mouse buttons and have something delivered the next day right to your house. Instead, you go to a store, you go to the hassle of going to the store, and then you have to search down an employee, which are few and far between because of the minimum wage laws. They fired them all, and get them to unlock the stupid case in order to get a bottle of Tylenol. How ridiculous is that?
Now, the good news is, by the way, and there's actually a big implementation conference on it that I was supposed to go to, but I did not do it, on Proposition 36 tomorrow. Okay. So, a Prop 36, which we pass, is going to solve some of these problems, but you're right. Cities like Oakland and San Francisco are, you can call it a doom loop. I call it an economic downfall. I think due to San Francisco, the beauty of the area, Oakland, whatever, the cities are going bankrupt. They're not getting the tax base. It's more even than the hassle that you talk about. But yeah, that's one. And let's talk about the UCLA student that got kicked out of class.
But what was this student doing? Taking her clothes off in class, smoking marijuana, snorting cocaine,
No, we're not talking about my college days.
taking a
Let's talk with
knife
the
and
current
threatening the
story.
professor. No, none of that stuff. It was a therapy session for students who were upset that Trump got elected at UCLA, also known as "You Clowns Lose Again." And and when she announced that she was a Trump voter, they said, "You're kicked out of this class for the rest of the quarter." UCLA's on the quarter system. And so obviously that's illegal. Obviously that's a breach of contract for a student not being allowed to go to class. Obviously there's discrimination violating state and federal law. I hope that student sues and sues and sues UCLA because they deserve it.
And the interesting part, a couple side notes on that story. Um, they felt the quote was a threat to their fellow students' safety. And the threatening quote was, and I apologize, please don't throw us off the air, because I voted for Donald Trump, was the quote. And that apparently was enough for these students to fear for their safety.
Well, I guess
I
if we were in the class, they would really feel it for their safety. If those students had to watch this video cast, they'd probably all be in mental institutions because they'd be so upset.
Well, not only that, could it be a bit weird because we're a bit old for college, but let's put that down.
Well,
Although
but we raised the average IQ of a UCLA classroom.
yes, that's true. And by the way, for everyone out there, UCLA is pretty much public money. So this is different between USC that let Kurt in. USC is
And
a private.
Caltech let me in, and Harvey Mudd, and Claremont Men's College, just to be clear.
My
All
point is,
private schools.
private
Yes, yes.
schools. Public schools are public money. So the reality is, it is the public arena, in addition to the freedom of speech, which comes in any arena. These are public arenas paid for by your tax dollars. So I found that incredibly fascinating, along with, the fact it's okay to protest on campus and stop Jewish students from walking across campus, but not the other one. Let's talk about Children's Hospital.
And this is not UCLA. She's probably a UCLA grad. That's probably part of the problem.
Well, she might not even be a grad of any school. I guess theoretically she's supposed to be a doctor. Joanna Olson Kennedy, one of those evil adults that wants to castrate children.
She should be locked up. She should be in prison. In fact, death row is not too out of reach as far as I'm concerned.
If I was in charge, every teacher, parent, doctor, every adult that was an accessory to castrating a child would be hung in public like in the Old West, because public hangings are a great deterrence, and we need to bring back public hangings for those people.
And this
Not only that, I want to add something else, Kurt. Not only are they a public deterrence, they were great business for all the restaurants surrounding the hanging square. So that might be a way to bring some of Oakland's economic back. What the hell, right?
Trickle down in more ways than one. So this came from Libs of TikTok, right? When the story about her, Joanna Olson Kennedy. I mean, again, you got a hyphen last name, you got to wonder what's going on. But
Oh, you got
they
some liberal that has a beta male husband, is what you got.
they've been making bank on all of these surgeries and all of these drugs that they're prescribing. They don't care about children, even though it's Children's Hospital. They're making money and they're getting lifelong patients because these people that go through the trans, they're on puberty changing drugs and hormone drugs their entire lifetime. You're getting them literally. Somebody was estimating $1 million over the lifetime of one of these trans people of medical services that they have to buy in order to stay trans. And by the way, we're paying for that because the insurance companies are forced to pay for that by the state of California. And so, as a
Which is
ratepayer,
right. Well, by the way, as an added point, and you can Google this because I did one day. If you want to look up transgenderism as an industry and say, how is it? You're going to find, last I looked, which is about a year ago, it's about an $870 million, over $1 billion industry growing at 15% a year. And Kurt, I got a question
Now,
for you.
Mike, I'm a financial guy. You're a financial guy. That industry ain't growing at 15% a year after January 20th. You can bank on that.
No, I get it. I get it. But here's a question I got for you. Kurt, if you were a liberal, play along at home.
So I'd have to fantasize, but okay.
Okay, fantasize. If you were a liberal and really believed as strongly as these people on the left say they do, that Johnny should be Jane, that Sally should be Sam, that it is something with this child from the beginning of time, then why the expletive deleted? Wouldn't you do the surgeries for free?
yeah, but out of the kindness of your heart, I agree.
You know, I
No,
mean,
nobody does anything for free, guys.
well, we fly doctors over, Doctors Without Borders. I'm
Wait a
just
minute,
saying
wait a minute.
this.
I'm sorry,
Nurses don't work for free in the hospital. Doctors don't work for free in the hospital. Lawyers generally don't work for free.
Newsom flies all these people into the state to give them free abortions and free trans surgeries.
Right. He flies them into the state. The point is, the doctors who are doing it, who are mutilating these children, supposedly for a cause. And I forget if it was you that told me or someone did. They know a few of these doctors. It might have been you, Kurt. And they say they make bank doing it, man. It's good money.
Forty
Well, let me,
thousand bucks at Vanderbilt for one of these surgeries.
Kurt, I'm very worried that you know the exact number of that figure. Are you going to come on wearing a wig next? It's like Kirkle.
No,
It's
it's because they were outed by
$32,465.
no,
A
they were
first whack
outed by
takes
some
four
people
hours.
that got fired at the at Vanderbilt. So it
Mhm.
was disclosed. Now
Did
Let
they
me
they
tell
actually
you.
did they actually get fired?
yeah, people who opposed the stuff got fired.
So
Yeah,
do you
no,
think
there's the problem. We're indoctrinating. This goes back to education we talk about, guys. We're indoctrinating these students. And there's another one I put out today for the Division of Dermatology or some crap that I think I put it out today or yesterday, where they have DEI now embedded in their medical papers. And I frankly don't give a damn if you're black, white, green, orange, short, or tall. I want to be treated for my medical problem by the most competent doctor possible. And I don't want the doctor saying they're going to treat me or not treat me for any race, regardless of race or gender. But they've been baking this in as they build institutions. Gentlemen, just like they slipped it in on the ballots when we weren't looking about 15 years ago, right? The Democrats baked this in. We've got to take out and thaw it very, very quickly here to make things happen.
Oh, DEI is dead. There's a guy named Robbie Starbuck that you guys probably know about online that identifies DEI programs in corporations because he gets whistleblowers. And he's damaged many of these companies from a PR perspective. And now all he has to do is contact them and said, I'm going to go public about your DEI program. And you see people that are canceling their DEI programs to prevent his attacks.
But I'll
Trump
tell
is
you
going to
something.
get rid of it in the military, the federal government. He's going to ban it.
Here's the problem. And I used to do a lot with the military and I dealt a lot with these folks, and it was called diversity. It was called by many, many names. And it went through a phase, and I said this quite often, right? And this is way back in the 90s when I used to be good looking. I said, look, these companies are going to eliminate, their department, their earth department, their recycling department, their diversity department when times get hard, which they will because they're not revenue producing, right? It went away, it came back. If we're not careful, it comes back under a different name. So it always pays attention to be vigilant.
No, Mike, you're 100% right. Look at Goals 2000 and all the other education programs, Common Core. They're just the same. They're just repackaged the same thing with different names.
Yeah,
Right. So what we have to do is stay
climate change.
vigilant. Go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just global warming, climate change, it's the same old, basically Soviet crap. Let's control the people. And they just changed the name to make
So
it
you
work.
guys are old enough to remember Time Magazine, The Coming Ice Age, and then
Oh, yeah.
Al Gore and all these other
Nuclear
celebrities
winter.
who claim, well, and we only have 5 years, we only have 10 years, and the Earth is going to be over. And some of those predictions were made 20 plus years ago. We're still here.
Hey,
It's funny.
So
one of
Chicken
the-
Little said the sky is falling, and it hasn't fallen yet.
Hey, let's talk about the sanctuary state.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Before we get there, I want to throw into Kurt's last point. Then we'll go to the sanctuary state. A song from the 60s that's still true in California. Remember that one? Don't drink the water.
You're too old for us. We don't remember the 60s.
Don't drink the water and don't breathe the air. And in spite of all the crap Newsom has put us through the last 8 years and the Democrats have put us through, you still can't drink the water and you still can't breathe the air. So how's it working out with all these rules and regulations? Except now we can't afford bottled water and they're going to charge us for the air. Let's talk about sanctuary state laws before we roll to our last quarter here.
I mean, we're starting to see it across the whole country, not just in California, right? You got the mayor of Chicago and all these other places saying, hey, we're going to prevent them from ICE from deporting illegal aliens. And I've heard others like Mark Levin sit there and say, no, wait a minute. This is what the Confederacy did. They basically said, hey, we're not going to acknowledge federal law, especially in regards to slavery, and we're going to do our own thing. And they withdrew from the Union. I mean, why aren't we using the insurrection word on these idiots?
Great point. And I've said this often. You guys have heard me. I think that we ought to take the mayor of Denver, Karen Bass in LA, Gavin Newsom, the mayor of Chicago, the governor of Illinois, and simply send them a DVD. I will show them old school of the movie Lincoln. Okay. You cannot succeed from the union and make your own rules. It ends badly. And this is a bunch of hyperbole. I'm really jumping down on this one because I'm tired of the state of California spending my tax dollars on something when we get to California just to promote Newsom's career. We already have a deficit. He's promoting cars that people aren't buying. Did you guys know? We're not really off like topic from Sanctuary State a bit. We're supposed to have 25% of our cars by next year be electric that are sold in California. That would require a 33% increase in electric cars, which are moving about as fast as I do at my age, trying to get from here to there. They're not moving. Okay, so Gavin's kingdom is crashing around. And the problem is, it's costing my money. And that's exactly what they're going to do with the sanctuary.
Mike, what you just said is very important because Trump said he's going to get rid of all EV mandates when he takes office next month.
Oh no, Gavin's going to reinstate them with my tax dollars. Remember that? Except for Tesla, the only company that makes them in the state.
He can try to do anything he wants, but the Interstate Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution will preempt it.
Well, no, what Gavin came out to say is that, one of the things that Trump is going to do is he's going to cut off all the federal tax subsidies if you buy an electric car, right? You're not going to get a break in your federal taxes. And Gavin's basically saying, fine, we'll make up for it and we'll give you a bigger break on the California taxes. You can already get $12,000 off your California taxes in the form of credit, not just a deduction, if you buy an EV car. So, and oh, by the way, have you heard? They're giving away e-bikes in the state of California.
It's another
That's
classic, right?
asinine. That's an asinine. way to go.
$2,000 per e-bike to what are considered low-income families, because I guess we're regulating the bicycles, and we're spending another 3 to 5 million on that. And again, it's million with an M, still a lot of money. We would like, by the way, if you want to contribute 3 to 5 million to rebuild California, hey, we'll give you my number. I just want to be perfectly clear on that.
Oh yeah, we're gonna take away your jobs. You can't afford gas. You can't have a car. But hey, we'll give you an e-bike. Good luck with that.
And what do you want to bet? That the manufacturer of e-bikes is a donor to?
Governor Newsom? Wow, really? The
I don't know. What are the odds?
poor little Gavin. I want an e-bike. I mean, what's it going to cost here? What do you have to do? So I like in San Diego, they're one of the latest guys to do the sanctuary state. They call themselves the super sanctuary policy, and the county sheriff goes, the board of supervisors, the board of supervisors does not set the policy for the county sheriff. That would be me.
All right, I got a quick question because we only have one show before our Christmas and New Year's break. So, Mike, just to tease the audience, we got a governor's race coming up in 2026. Candidates are going to start declaring in 2025. Give us a quick rundown of who's running for governor for the Democrats and who's running on the Republican side.
Well, we're not quite sure who isn't running for governor. That's a registered Democrat. Let's put it that way, because apparently that race is going to be more crowded than the plane full of immigrants that Trump is going to ship back to Venezuela. What we do know is the latest noise is Katie Porter might run.
What a loathsome human being.
If we make comments on each one of them, Kurt, we'll never get through this show. We'll be spewing on to next week. We know Fiona Ma, who's also a loathsome human being, is going to run. Rob Bont is certainly talking about run. For sure, somebody is running is a name that most of America can't pronounce, Elaine Koulakis, who's the lieutenant governor of California. And we have a large slew of others. On the Republican side, we know, and I'm not supposed to say this, so don't let it leak anywhere, that Steve Hilton is probably running for governor, and it looks like Chad Bianco will, and a few other folks coming forward. We won't have time, but we're actually going to cover much of this in depth in January, and a lot of the initiatives and state offices. That's a great point that we're starting in 2025. But I want to get back to something that our side needs to run on before that we kind of glazed over here. Gavin Newsom, okay, who I really just wish, I never thought I would say this. Trump, give him a position so you can fire him. Okay, just give him a position. Okay, I don't care what it is. Okay, janitor, something, so we can get rid of him. Your presidential salary, God bless you for not taking. Donate it to him to take a job to get his posterior out of California. This is what's happening to us. And we've reported on this a lot. But let me sum up. We've got a sanctuary state that is going to hold water. Now, eventually the feds are going to win because they're the feds. What's doing great damage to California is this electric car debacle. If people want to buy an electric car, God bless them. Buy an electric car. But not only is Gavin talking about doing a subsidy, there's one reason that people don't buy electric cars is you can't charge them when you're on the road. There's nowhere to charge them. And when they put up a charging station, they're stealing the copper wires so they don't work. But hold on. The gas-powered car came along, and I remember it well, and I gave up my horse, okay, and got my gas-powered car. gas stations on their own with private industry built gas stations. Some made it, some didn't. California is investing a huge infrastructure in these charging stations, and that bill is going to be with us for the next 20 years. They can't even build enough charging stations to meet Gavin's mandate. By the time he leaves office in January of 2027, we're going to be stuck with a fiscal bogey if we don't do something soon that is going to get us for the next generation. And we should go into depth on that in some show, maybe with somebody smarter than me, one of the experts, which of course could be anybody listening to this.
All right, to everybody listening, Merry Christmas as we get near the end of our show. Spend time with your family. We got a show next Wednesday, right, gentlemen?
We do, and I may be doing that show from an event. I'll figure that out for associate delegates. Kurt, every week we put out a lot of great stories, and I want to thank you for doing that. The holidays is coming up. We are going to do a show next week and accelerate this show on steroids. But thanks, Kurt. I don't say this often. Well, because I'm not a nice guy, Kurt. But thanks for all you do for the show, and we do appreciate it, even though we always don't see eye to eye on sports. Okay?
Well, that's because I root for teams that win championships.
That's true. And I'm with the Republicans, and I root for teams which are underdogs and optimistic. So like it or not,
But I have to admit, I would say the San Diego Padres were the second best team in baseball this year. I will give you
I
that.
will grant you that. By the way, even though the Republicans finished second, to take that metaphor one, we're the best party in California, and we just need to prove it to more people. Scott, help me roll to the end here.
So I was looking at this article on the shielding migrants, again, sanctuary state type stuff. And they actually voted, this is San Diego County, they actually voted to restrict local cooperation with ICE, even in cases where migrants have been charged with heinous crimes. So they are going out of their way to protect it. This is how sick the Democratic Party is.
Well, but Scott, let's talk about that. The federal law says it's a federal crime to obstruct enforcement of immigration laws. And I think the Trump administration will have the cojones to throw them in jail. Throw them in jail if they obstruct.
Well, maybe they had to take, I think it was a 3-1 vote. I think they had to arrest the 3 county supervisors that voted for it and put them in jail.
Actually, I think under federal law, the people you would arrest are the underlings that do the obstruction. That's who's probably going to jail.
It's a fine line. It's interesting. What a sanctuary state, and I want to be really clear on. We probably need to do a whole show on this at some point.
But I'm sorry, sheltering rapists and murderers. I mean, are these guys idiots? Do they value the power that they get in these potential Democrat voters that much that they're going to put us residents at risk and allow these rapists and murderers to go free?
They hate us, Scott. The Democrat Party hates America. They've proven that.
Scott just asked the most rhetorical question I've ever heard him speak. Are these guys idiots?
They're Democrats. I'm sorry. We're being redundant.
Is the Pope Catholic?
Here's the problem we have. Let's face it. One reason we do this show every week and we continue to fight. We'll be on radio. You see us around. We do this because we care. Because what you have, and most of America's caught on to that. California are inching toward it. You've got limousine liberals making these laws, putting these people in office. Gavin Newsom owns a $4.5 million mansion, as we covered last week. He didn't have to sell to buy his $9.5 million mansion because he doesn't want to live in the people's house, the governor's mansion that the state of California supplies with. That's 3 mansion. He's surrounded by armed guards driving gas-powered cars where it tells us not to be armed and drive electric cars, okay? Why would they worry about the rapists, the murderers, the gas prices? It's not their problem. It's our problem, but we need to make it their problem, right, gentlemen?
Absolutely. In California Free Radio, that's one of the things we're trying to do is get the word out from behind or from within the California curtain to the rest of the country, because we don't want the rest of the country to be like California. So we're fighting to change California. And one of the things we could do is Get rid of Gavin Newsom. Give me
Well,
a
that
break.
happens automatically in 2026 when he's termed out.
It
Well,
does,
but
but
he
we
wants
have
to
to
share
make
what's
sure.
up with America.
Right. We have to make sure too, by the way, that we get some initiatives passed. We're going to spend a lot of the upcoming year talking about that and making sure that we're 0 for 8 in state offices. Let's get real here. And we have a minority. I forget to mention every week, by the way, we do have a YouTube channel called Outrage, which makes it easy to share the show on other types of media. The show is automatically posted to it. And here's the reality. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see you one more time before the holidays. Maybe too much for you, but you're going to have to deal with it. But for everyone out there, it's California Free Radio. We do this to scream loud and clear. And the grassroots is really just a fancy way of saying it's the people. And a rising up of the people doesn't have to be a storming of the Capitol, but does have to be an expression of free speech. And you have to continue to forget the people that are the limousine liberals trying to convince them it's not happening. Forget the people that are your neighbors and they agree with you a lot of the time because they already know. Our job is to convince the people that don't participate. And so, everyone out there, we'll be back one more time before the holidays, but we'll be back many times subsequently. But in the meantime, as many times as you can share what we do on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on X, off YouTube, contribute if you can, will help us continue our not so underground move to take back our damn state. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'll be seeing you next week and talk to you soon before. I'm going to end this feed right now. And remember, share, watch, contribute because it's your damn state